like that, just building the Coaching Ethics Forum conference coming at the end of the year, and also a new magazine. So this is it's an interesting webinar for me to accept to be recorded, because it's the first one off the block for me for the year. So it's probably going to be rusty all over the place, but we'll go with it. I'm just going to put some slides up just to help me along. So today we're talking about coach supervision and how unethical it could be. So I have a scenario for you to all work with that later, but I'm just going to highlight some things. And you want me to introduce myself, is that right, Lily? So while we're on this slide, we'll just hang out with me a little bit. So I'm a coaching psychologist, and that is that I'm a coach, and I'm a registered psychologist in Australia and France. I'm the co-founder of the Coaching Ethics Forum, the Journal of Coaching Ethics, and the up-and-coming new magazine, Ethical Edge Insights. So I've done a little bit of work around ethics and still going. Got 2 edited books on ethics, and the first edited book was Positive Psychology Coaching in the Workplace, which is kind of like my forever favorite baby, I think, being the first one. And it really is pulls all my career together in one book. So I'm extraordinarily passionate about that as well, but also about the science of well-being, which is what that book is. It's about the science of well-being and how that can be shown and worked with in coaching. And I actually think that I like to put it under the ethical banner as well, because, or umbrella, because it I think we have an obligation to be working with everyone's well-being, including our own, as one of those tenets of that underpins ethical professional behavior. So that's kind of me in short, unless anyone else would like to. I know Eva's on here. I've worked with Eva editing a book. Maybe she'll have some other less complimentary words to say about me, but we'll see. So next slide, let's move on from me.
Can I share something?
Yeah, sure, go
Wendy?
for it.
Yeah, so it's something that you're not allowed to say, but I love it so much that I'm allowed to say. When I first met Wendy Ann, this was before the first Coaching Ethics Forum, the very first edition, where I was invited to be on a panel. And Wendy Ann shared with me her passion for ethics, and she says, I want to make ethics a sexy subject. And I love that. And I still sit with that because I thought it was such a brilliant way of putting it, because it's so interesting and dynamic. But ever since, for some reason, I think someone mentioned that maybe it wasn't a good word to use, but I will use it. And yeah, that describes very much who you are, Wendy. And for me, it's a little disruptive and fun.
Thank you. And just as we're on this topic of sexy, and let's add the word beautiful, because lately I've been not using the word sexy so much, not because of anyone else's comments. I don't really care what people say about me and ethics, unless they want to tell me, say I'm unethical. But I've been using the word beautiful, and how just wanting to make ethics beautiful, because people tend to gravitate towards beauty. And so part of doing that, you'll see this image in the background behind all the text. That's the image that's part of the cover of each article on the Journal of Coaching Ethics. And I think it's a beautiful image, some of my favorite colors in it, but also how it just, everything's kind of meshing together, and having some bits of explosion of color, and I think it kind of exemplifies how ethics shows up in life as well. So beautiful is the word I'm going with now, Eva. It's sexy's transplanted, because I think that's happened. So now I have to remind myself of the next slide, and I think it is one that's going to be asking you to do a Menti thingamajig. Where's my, there we go. No, we'll go to here. So I don't know why it says 50-50 unless I've done something wrong. Here we go. But if you could get out your phone, get up the menti.com website on your phone, put the user code in 46360113. My apologies to all you people who might listen to the recording, but you'll see the results. And if you could answer the question of how ethically mature are you? And I hope it works. Because I'm a bit surprised to see that there's a 50-50 thing up there already. Oh, look, we're working now. I just want to say all these, the different scale that I've got there, I've just made it up. You know, there's nowhere that I'm aware of in the research that actually has these different categories. I've just made it up just for us to have a look at. Young adults. I think that's really interesting. Are you all supervisors? Yeah? Young adults. 67% at young adult. Interesting. Baby, very young. No one's answered as right now. I think that's really curious. If I was to have answered this, I would have gone for right now, as opposed to a global idea about where I would be sitting. I'm going to put Lily in right now and say she's very mature right now. Contextual. Why? Because she contracted on the recording before we came in. But she might do something in the next couple of minutes which actually lowers the grade a bit, depending on the context. Next slide. It's another interactive one. Ready? Come on. There we go. How do you know? So what made you answer that you were young? I told you why Lily was like, she's super, super, super ethically mature around contracting at webinars. Is it working? So it's
No,
working.
I
Not for.
sent some words in, but it's not showing up. I said submit, and I submitted 3 words, but
Let me try something because I can see something in the back. Oh no, I can't do it.
It happens to me as well. I put the words, but doesn't come.
Yeah, because I think there's something going on with.
Have you got this eye crossed at the bottom of the Mentimeter? If the eye is crossed, it means that you don't reveal the answers. And you have to click this. There is the, like in the bottom left corner of Mentimeter, there should be the eye that you're hiding the answers.
Yeah, no, I don't know why that's I don't know why that happened. I'm sorry. Oh, I see. When I go down there. No, now no, it was working. Let me show you somewhere else where it should be. It just didn't work. All right, talk to me. I'm sorry. Talk to me. So give me some reasons why. I'll put them in the chat if you don't want to come on. Because it didn't work. Let's hope the next one works. What have we
You
got?
you ask, how do you know you are ethical mature? And I
Yeah.
will answer because I know how to put my boundaries.
Okay. Okay, so that's one answer. Two, I'm just going to say a few so they're on the recording. Because people undertake reflection and supervision, so that's like a protective factor. They reflect on ethics and they're curious about it. Interestingly enough, we did the Coaching Ethics Forum, still looking at data and research, and we had some people who said they very rarely thought about their ethical activities in their work. It was really interesting. And then if you ask people about how often they engage, their answers were really, really curious, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it, actually. We're still looking at it all. Reflection and being curious about it. So is this being curious about what exactly? If you're, because the word ethics can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. And so, you know, what is it that we're checking in on? So we're checking in on boundaries. We're checking in on what other things? We're checking in on contracting. What are the other things that we're checking in on if we're checking in? I like to drive specifics on ethics because it's so easy just to use the word ethics. And it's easy to go to, well, I check in on confidentiality. Yeah, but I wonder what specifically about that do you need to be checking in on? I'm scared to put the next one up because I'm wondering if it's not going to work either. But you can try it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll just continue on anyway. And so it's like, so where do you draw on your wisdom? So I've got a range of ideas about where you might draw on your wisdom. And this is whether you're coaching, whether you're supervising, it's just ethics generally, that where are you drawing on to get your wisdom? Let me know if it's working or not. I've probably mucked it up. It's not coming up. So talk to me. Come on, talk to me. Where you draw on your wisdom.
So
Yeah.
for me, first one would be self-education, and then actively from supervision as well. That's the place. So self-education is like reading, participating conferences, webinars like this, but actively, I think it's discussing it with my supervisor.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Earlier, no, when was it? Last week, I was in a community of practice of supervision of team coaches and bringing a case to be discussed with peers, and having multiple lenses also in discussion with peers.
Yeah.
As an example.
Yeah, absolutely. With colleagues. I've got this Indigenous carving up from the northwest of Australia, which a photo I took in May. So I think there's wisdom in all places, is really just what that represents. Whether it's real or not, a real rock painting, I'm not so sure by the look of it. But anyway, I found it and took a photo. But it's just about what it symbolizes. is that the wisdom that we can draw on is within ourselves, but it's also amongst others. And it can be on symbols, it can be in books, it can be at the forum. There you go, Lily, it's where I'm giving it all a big plug here, all my stuff. So it can be reading, it can be writing. You know, it's not just about absorbing what other people are telling you, but it's about what you learn from your action and engaging in, whether it be writing, whether it be discussions, whether it be what someone else has said. So I think there's multiple places to be drawing on the wisdom, which includes supervision, but supervision isn't the be all and end all to building on that wisdom, because in supervision, while I'm a huge fan of it and say everyone should be in supervision, it's only one contact point. And this is important.
I think there's something about being engaged with the world as well, being aware of what's out there. So as the world evolves, that we're evolving as well. So what
Yeah.
is a reasonable person test today may not have been the reasonable person test 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it is something that's not fixed. It's something that even if there's a particular scenario that arises over and over again, it needs to be looked at again and again and again. You can still use the wisdom from the first time, second, third time to help build your understanding of what's going on and what you need to do and all the decisions you could make, but you have to be looking at it with a fresh lens every time and not just take for granted the actions from previous contexts to know that that's what's going to work, because that may not. So it is something that's quite dynamic, even if the contexts are very similar that you find yourself in. So, oh, look, it's probably not going to work again. What are the X's there for? So I just want you to talk to me here unless it works. I want to know because we want to go to supervision specifically now, and what are some of the challenges specific for supervisors that arise? And if this doesn't work, which I don't know what the XXX is all about, but if it doesn't work, we'll just get rid of the slides and go and chit chat. Does that look like it's not working again? Not working? Right. Gone. Let's chit chat. Confusion with mentoring. Yeah, but supervision shows up in various different ways. What are the other challenges for supervisors?
I can share something which I had at the beginning, and I think Lily and Damian, because they took me supervision, they remember that it was really actually challenging for me to bring ethical aspects even. I thought that I'm not qualified enough to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And as well, because it's I felt that was my assumption that it might trigger some guilt and shame, and because that's like a socially heavy word, ethical challenges.
Yeah.
I was reluctant to talk about it. I remember that my first year of being an active supervisor was like really looking into this. Yeah, how courageous I am to even discuss it with supervisees.
Yeah. What else?
Jean-Elvire, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm thinking about something we don't think about often. It's about the storage of information collected from clients. If we are coaches or supervisors, this is a very sensitive thing.
Yep, absolutely. It's like how secure it is.
Yeah.
And what you do with it.
Yeah.
I'm also thinking about things like, what if you're supervising someone and you just feel like they're just not up to the grade? You know, perhaps they shouldn't be coaching for whatever reason. What do you do about that as a supervisor? What if the person you're supervising is engaging in some behaviors that you've got either could be illegal, for one, or are just really what you would consider to be pretty poor grade ethical behavior?
Well, that's an interesting point, Wendy Ann, because I was in a conversation the other day around what could be ethical, or what could be legal, may not necessarily be ethical.
Yeah, and what responsibilities do you have as a supervisor?
Like one of the topics that came up was somebody asking about whether or not they felt it was ethical to coach somebody who was thinking about moving across boundaries to get a medical procedure that was illegal in their jurisdiction.
So there's a difference between morals and ethics, and I think we have to remember that. And I like to make that difference between morals are firmly set on my beliefs and values, and ethics is the behavior that then you undertake. And for me, just to separate the two in that way makes it easier. So I know that this person might be doing this, which transgresses my own morals and beliefs. But from a legal standing, it's perfectly okay in one jurisdiction. So I don't know that we can do much about that, but we can make decisions about what our interactions with that person might be. Other things I think about is, should we be supervising coaches who are also our friends? Are there rules and boundaries around that kind of behavior? Have we thought about that? How might those dual relationships be impacting the quality of the supervision? What if your coach that you're supervising is clearly working with clients that is outside of their skill set, verging on giving therapy and they're not therapists, this kind of thing? They're working with people with trauma because they've had trauma-based coaching, trauma training, but they shouldn't be working with trauma. That doesn't make them able to work with trauma. It doesn't make them a trauma coach, because I don't know that it actually really is trauma coaching. But they've just, they're just working outside of where you deem that they're fit to be working, actually, in whatever capacity that is. I'm sure it shows up. What if you find your coach just doesn't have the capacity to be coaching right now? They are consistently coming up into supervision and they're struggling. They're struggling in their own way, in many ways, whether that's in their personal life or in their coaching life. My thoughts are about supervision and what's the responsibility of a supervisor in these contexts. They all pose significant ethical dilemmas for the supervisor, not just the coach. Where my thinking on this stuff is fueled from is from my psychology. So in psychology, my supervisor has legal obligations to make sure I'm working within my scope of work, and they can report me. I could lose my license. And I think coaching, it shows up differently in this way. Unless you're a coaching psychologist, then there's different bandies around that again, especially in the UK where it's a registered title. So what other challenges do you get? Any of this, or how do you work with that? I'm asking you, how do you work with any of those? Yeah, Teresa?
Yes, I would like to tell you about a situation that I have with a client that wasn't ethical, very ethical with the situation with his client, right? So what we did is first we explore what is happening in the supervisee, and then we took time to explore and to review the ICF ethicals and the EMCC ethicals for supervisors, for coaches, right? And it makes clarify my client of, oh, okay, this is not something that it's around the space. It's something that is written and I need to take care of it, said my client at that time. So what I think is the more you are close to the papers and you invite your client to be close to the papers and read once again, they will learn, because sometimes they forgot or they forget, right? So for me, it works very well. And in the case of therapy as well, I will show and I will have the conversation about, okay, look at what is ICF saying about this point, this issue or this topic, and what is EMCC saying. And in my case, it clarifies everything. About moral, yes, when it comes to moral, I stay in the curiosity statement mindset and in the reflective mindset to explore values in my client.
Okay. So thanks for that, Teresa. And so what I'm hearing there is a lot of the work going on for the client, you working with the client to actually increase or enhance how they're working ethically. But I'm thinking about the supervisor. Is the supervisor doing anything themselves around these issues that they're finding with their coaching, with their coachee? Is it that the supervisor takes the back seat to try and help guide them by conversations of curiosity, etc., and reviewing the ethical guidelines? Or does the supervisor have some kind of ethical obligation to do more than that, than just exploring with their coach? So I say to you, what do you think is, because I know all of you are have been supervising much longer than I have. I've been in the game for 20 odd years, but I've not been supervising. So I'm asking you, because I know all of you are much more experienced than I, but I'm prodding, not necessarily, okay, well, good, you and me alike. But I'm wanting to ask you the questions to prod you to think about where's your obligations as supervisors in these contexts that we're speaking about. Anyone want to make comment?
Well, Wendy, and I think that as supervisors, we need to work with our own supervisors because we need to keep continuously growing, developing, and asking ourselves what are our blind spots around these issues.
Yeah.
So I do believe that we do have a responsibility to continue learning about that. And one topic in particular, when you were talking, that caught my attention is boundaries. Somebody talk about that boundaries too, how to set up boundaries. And I remember working with colleagues. You know, many of my colleagues are my friends here too. Some here in this call today. But what is interesting is, like, for example, if I have a supervisor who is not a friend, but if I have a challenge, I may call Eva and say, Eva, I have this challenge, and I know that Eva will be very tough with me. I know she loves me, but I know that she has very high standards.
Yeah.
So I trust her judgment. So I think that also it's interesting knowing that many times as supervisor we may work with colleagues, and sometimes we may trust the judgment of our colleagues and they know us maybe deeper that for good and bad, for both, I think that sometimes can be an advantage. It's thinking a little bit out of the box here. But I still do believe that I need to work with my supervisor who I paid and that I have my regular relationships. That I was just
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll come to you in a second, Maria. And there's something that just twigged in my mind as you were saying that was about trusting someone else's judgment. I'm like, okay, I trust that person. They work with high standards. But in the end of the day, this is my decision. So whatever they think or whatever they bring to the topic and the conversation, I need to be thinking about that in the broader context of what it's about and looking at other opinions and other thoughts and what my own are. And at the end of the day, if you have a really solid rationale for the decision you make amongst the different possible decisions you could make, I think you're standing on fairly solid ground. Then we need to take the action. That's the other point. And there's a huge gap between actually making a decision and taking some action. Huge gap. Maria, you were
Yes.
yes.
So when you asked the question, I was thinking a couple of things. One was what Damien just mentioned to continue to do our supervision. And then what came up for me when you asked the question was knowing the difference between, is this a time when I explore with the supervisee, or is this a time when I really have to be up here and look at all the different context, and maybe it's less about exploring, but it's more about saying this seems to be unethical, and so we need to do something about it. We need to come to a solution, or we need to think about how to walk through this because it verges on unethical.
Yeah. And there's degrees of ethicality. It's not a black and white scenario. And just as you're saying that, just something I think is really important that I've written to in the case studies, ethical case studies book in the first chapter, which, by the way, can I say this is being recorded? I think it's the first 2 chapters of that book are probably the best chapters written around coaching and ethics so far. So am I allowed to say that on a recording? But anyway, it's what's in them. And the first chapter, what I want to say is it's about tensions, right? There's a theory in there about the tensions that arise, and we have to be aware of those tensions, whether they're cognitive tensions, whether they're emotional tensions. Be aware of the tensions, because those tensions that you're feeling and experiencing are alerting you to something you need to take more attention to understand and then make decisions around. Eva?
Thank you. So actually what I'm going to comment on goes back to your previous question about what's our duty as supervisors, but also to the tensions in our bodies. So some of us here are supervisors of supervisors in training. And what happens, as it has, when you think someone in training is not fit for purpose? So what's your responsibility? Because then there's another layer. So not only do I have to go to my supervisor, but I had to go back to Damien and say, Damien, I have reasons to be concerned here. So also to look at this as the layers and your responsibilities. Now, the other thing that has been recently coming to me is the how to. So and that's the case I took recently to the community of practice, and what we came up with was the ethics of care, also towards someone who is deeply ashamed for noticing a blind spot in supervision. So how to balance that? And maybe that's what you're going to address now with this tensions. I don't know.
The ethics of care. I mean, I was going to move into just quickly into some of the areas of positive psychology, from the knowing to doing. We know what we've got to do. We've made a decision. We've thought it out. We've consulted everyone that we can think of that we feel the need to. And we have a decision, and then we've got to take some action. It's like, so how do we do that? There's this huge gap, is what I was saying, of people knowing what to do and actually doing it. And I like to then draw in on the field of positive psychology around the strengths. It's work that we do is what is it, what capacities do I need to build, to tap into, to be able to take the action that I need to take. For me, it's always sitting in courage. I have to sit in courage. I need to build up the courage to say what I need to say. And if I build up enough, then I can also sit in a place of confidence, knowing that I've done all the work. And so I can be compassionate in the words I choose to use to try and get something done. Although there have been times where I haven't been so compassionate, I have to be honest. It depends on the scenario. But sorry, I got another question here. So I tend to, just quickly, I get into the field of positive psychology to help fuel me. I also look into and reflect on the different knowledge I have around the science of well-being to help build me up generally. Anyway, it's that someone asked me once when I was facing a significant dilemma just in recent times, and they said, what's going to bring you most peace? And I said, right here, right now, for me to just give up and not make the complaint I need to make is going to bring me the most peace right now. But in the future, it would have hurt me. I would have tapped down a couple of chunks of confidence professionally in the future if I hadn't taken any action. I would have been ruminating about it, going, damn, why didn't you do it? You should have done something. I had another conversation with another colleague, and they said to me, of course you've got to do something about it. You can't go leading all this ethics stuff and then not do what you're asking everyone else to do, which is to take action. I went, damn, hell yes, that's right up my alley. That's given me the confidence to go and do what I need to do. So it's so I just knew then that once I'd got it all sorted, all the bits, I knew what I needed to do. Then I had to figure out how to do it. And then I went and did it. And I knew that what gave me strength was on the basis that I knew my confidence and self-esteem were going to be intact in the long run, if not even greater, enhanced because of it. And I knew my well-being was going to benefit from taking hard action, as opposed to going, what's going to bring me peace right now is to just stop and do nothing and not take the action. So it was difficult, when some of these things you have to deal with and some of the people you have to mingle with to deal with them can be a bit challenging. So that's how I made my decision. I knew I was right because the other people were wrong. So how's that for a simple answer? In that particular scenario I was talking about then, it was very clear that was actually a really black and white scenario that the people were in the wrong. How do you know you're in the right in other ways? It's because you've consulted, you've read, you've thought about it, you've pulled apart the scenario, you understand it deeply in yourself, and you understand the rationale for the endpoint decision. And you're comfortable in that particular decision, even if you're a bit challenged by having to then take the action. But you are so comfortable in yourself that you go, I know this is the right decision, and you have a clear rationale. So if someone says to you, why did you do that? Well, this is why I did it. Exactly. You're able to explain it very well. And you know that it's going to do a rule of thumb, the least harm and the most good for the scenario, because you cannot be guaranteed that you won't have some kind of harm to someone if you have to make everything correct a course of action of someone else or yourself. How would you explain it to your children or future grandchildren? Yeah, well, this is true, but it might be different in those times in the future as well. So I think it's even about explaining it that it's correct for now. It's correct for now. Because if you had to explain it to your grandchildren when they can understand, it'd be having to explain it in the context of now, how the social dynamics of everything was working now. I had a scenario for you, and we've just got few minutes left, really, not enough to do this whole scenario, but here, let me give you something as a group. So I haven't, this is not real. It's not real to me, but I'm going to speak like it's real. So supervising someone for about 3 months, and they're consistently arriving, wanting to not focus on their coaching so much, but really talking about the challenges of some life circumstances at home. You've been meeting them for about once a month. And then one day they said, I think I'm going to leave my marriage because I think I'm having romantic feelings about my client. The scenario is, what do you do as a supervisor? What are your thoughts? Where's the tension for you? Where's the tension for the coach? I actually had a whole list of questions. I'm not going to give them to you because you'd be going, yeah, I can't do that now. It's like, yeah, no, I won't do that. But that's enough. What are the tensions for the coach? What are the tensions for you as a supervisor? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Engage in the voice. Come on and have a chat back.
My first loud voice in my head was, that's not allowed. Like a judge in my head show up immediately, like, oh, what's going on there in terms of relationship, coachee. And then I started to thinking, I do remember that from psychotherapeutic code of ethics. But what about coaching ethics? I remember something that the relationship cannot take advantage of a person, like the coaching relationship, but I don't remember anything about romantic relationship.
Yes, I actually know what it says. It says that the nature of the relationship cannot change in the course of the work.
But the relationship hasn't changed yet. They just said, I'm thinking about it.
Yes,
so there's
but
opportunity to engage in the conversation.
Yeah, I would bring that up right away. And have a conversation around that and then see where it goes.
And also, if I don't know, not ethically, but legally, I don't know what is the boundary there. But as a psychologist in the United States, at least, you need to wait 2 years to have a romantic relationship. But as a coach, as soon as you finish your relationship, you may not be doing anything that is illegal or considered unethical. So that's different too between psychology and coaching.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, isn't it? Well, to make this an ethical action, I'm going to cease coaching my coachee because I've actually fallen in love, and now we're going to start dating, and that's all really good. Yes, Brian?
Yeah, so before I would go to the rules, I think I would go to what's going on with this person and where they need, perhaps where they could possibly go to get some support to manage through this change, which I'm not sure is about coaching supervision. It could be, but yeah, there's a blurriness there for me. So I'd try to go there first in a supportive perhaps full picture view, if I could ever get that figured out in the moment.
Yeah, I agree. There are blurry lines there. You know, they've kept coming to supervision and they just keep talking about their home life. Admittedly, the home life is impacting the coaching, no doubt. So you kind of have to figure out, but it's like, okay, so how's this playing out in your coaching? Are we driving the conversation there? And maybe it is about having to drive the person towards maybe seeking some therapeutic support so they can understand more about what's going on. Maybe they should stop coaching the person that they think they're falling in love with as well. Just point blank, stop, hand them over to someone else till they figure themselves out.
There's a couple of interesting pieces. One is we go to the code of ethics, right? And yet the code of ethics isn't the end all and be all. It's just a place to go to see what the association that you belong to says. but it's not like black and white to say, yeah,
Mm.
this is it.
It's not a rule book. Mhm.
Right. Thank you. That's what I was getting at. And the other is more around, so I went to my moral place, and then I said, well, wait a minute, there's more going on here than just this. So it really, and the other piece I wanted to bring up was maybe this person's talking about, in the coaching space, transpersonal work, because they're talking about their family. And so it could transcend a case, because there's a lot of supervisors that believe that supervision is just about bringing cases.
Mhm.
And while that is true that you bring cases, there's also this big transpersonal space that sometimes clients want to work in, that helps support who they want to become. And that also touches into their coaching practice as well.
Mhm. Yep. There's lots of blurry lines around there. Any other thoughts?
Yes. I think I would open a conversation about what my client really needs right now at this moment. And am I the good person for my client right now in this moment?
Is that you, the supervisor, or you?
Me, the supervisor. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's where I would go.
Mhm. It's a curious place. And Eva, do you have a comment?
I think my first reaction would be to pull out the code of ethics and read it together with a person and ask them, what does it mean? And what are your choices? I think that's how I would handle it. I'm fascinated that people would be looking at the needs. I wouldn't. I would straight go to the code of ethics. So I'm rethinking everything here. Perhaps I should expand my. So I'm thinking, am I being too rigid? That's what I'm sitting with right now. And what do I need to ethically review in myself on handling a case like this?
Eva, I'm like you. However, the question I ask myself is, what does it say or evoke for me in terms of morals? I don't have any judgment. So that's why I'm going to the code of ethics. But I think that if it triggers our morals, our model of the world, and then we're going to more likely go into, am I the right person? How does that sit? I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking that at this stage.
Now,
But I just realized that I feel like I'm the guardian of the code of ethics. That's what I saw, which is a bit too much. So maybe to tone it down. That's the realization.
Bring the human in first and then bring the code in somewhere along the way. So what if your supervisee makes the decision that you think is fundamentally the worst possible decision to make, take a course of action that they're going to, what do you do then? What's your obligations and responsibilities as a supervisor if your coach is making a decision, because ultimately it's their decision where they're going to go and what they're going to do, and you go, this is just fundamentally wrong. I cannot sleep with this, supervising this person taking this action.
So linking a little bit to what Sophie and Eva just said, like whenever I have the strong judge voice in my head, that's the message for me that, okay, probably as Damian said, I need to supervise my own supervision, because that's, even if there is this normative element of it, my role is not to judge. My role is to help open up the reflection around that. And as well, when you said, this is their choice. So I can be like a thinking partner, a curious partner. As well, there is a place for me to express my view, like that how I would do it. At the same time, if I build this relationship that I'm the judge and the last person who says what is right and wrong, is something fundamentally wrong in this relationship as well. Supervisee, supervisor. Yeah, I think like I would rather be a thinking partner showing some options than just telling that's wrong and you cannot do it because this is wrong, yeah, morally or however. Yeah, I just this most the feedback to me as a supervisor that something is going on with me and my own internal work.
Yeah. So I don't know about
Might
actually saying to them, you're doing this wrong, but I think I just wonder about if coaching's really set up to accommodate the position of a supervisor that does entail having some responsibility, and you're there with a coach that's just doing something wrong. If you're doing something illegal, the course of action's very clear. You have to report it. If there's harm to self or others evidently clear, you have to report it. But here you have a coach that's not, going to stab someone or whatever. But
what about example? You say do something wrong, which is not illegal. So what would be the example of it? That I fundamentally believe that this is something wrong.
Okay, so for me, it would be in that scenario I gave you, that coach decides to take up a romantic relationship with that client. Or another one is that they continue to coach that client even though they have these romantic feelings for them. I think that's just as unethical as taking up a relationship. And my question is about the supervisor. What role do you have? What recourse do you have to try and fix any kind of alert or whatever? Natalie?
Yeah, I think that if the decision has an impact on the profession, globally, the profession of a coach, if it has an impact on that, I think that then I feel like I have some kind of an ethical authority to kind of then go into this discussion that Eva and Sophie were talking about earlier, then going into the ethics, the code of ethics, and say, well, your decision right now has an impact on the profession and what the profession is expecting of you as a professional coach. I think that I would go there then if that decision is, against what the profession is expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, I will tell my supervisee that there is an ethical impact as me as his or her supervisor. So this is something that is affecting my work as well.
What might that impact be?
That I am in some ways, I am acknowledge the situation. I am trying to support him, but it's a very binary combination of right and wrong that I won't feel comfortable, right?
Yeah.
So it comes my boundaries.
Yeah, this leans into what I call the psychological contract of coaching. And here I can take you to the psychological contracting chapter in the Ethical Coaches Handbook, which is a beautiful chapter to read. Then you got to read it a second time to actually take in all the messaging. And it's so subtle when you start thinking about this unconscious and conscious psychological contracting we're making in coaching. This is showing up now exactly in what we're talking about here, about how we're meant to be with how we suppose and assume we're meant to be with our clients, whether they're the coach or whether they're the supervisee. it's the same contracting stuff that sometimes is unconscious, and we have to really work at it and bring it conscious, and then figure it out. What does that mean? How's that impacting how I'm being with this client now? How's it impacting in terms of whether I'm making the most appropriate ethical decision around supervising them? In what way?
So Wendy, and I noticed we have 1 more minute, and I really want you to talk about the forum coming up.
Oh, yes. I want to see you all there. I've seen all your faces, so I know who to expect. Lily's going to be talking. Eva's going to be doing her bit as well, talking, and so is Inga. They've all got roles in our conference this year, and it's a 3-day virtual conference from 8:30 a.m. till 10:30 p.m. at night, December the 5th, 6th, and 7th, and we have some amazing speakers again this year. But it's what's more important than that, actually, that's just like icing on the cake. What's more important than that is about how this forum engages your thinking. We really want you to be engaging in the chat, listening to the speakers, challenging them on some aspects if you want to in the chat. And we have discussion groups of 3 different formats, which actually get you doing a bit of what we've been doing here. You know, I don't come to these webinars going, I have all the answers, I'm the ethics expert. I think that's certainly not where the forum comes from. That's not the ethos of the forum. It certainly is about you, engaging you to help refine your thinking and help you understand how complex and really dynamic and interesting ethics is, and how it plays out not just in our professional life, but it then plays out into our personal life as well. So I encourage you to come and join us at the forum.
And we'll put a link up in the LinkedIn ACSN website for those interested in.
Great.
Because we don't have time to put it up in the chat today, but I'll put something up there.
Yeah, well, we got a 20% discount till the end of September. So if you haven't taken advantage of it, go for it now.
There you go. Well, thank you, Wendy Ann.
Thank
and
you.
leading us in the conversation. It's been great to see you and work with you, and we'll see you in December.
Thank you. You've warmed me up.
Thank
Now,
you.
when you stop recording, can you stay on? Can everyone stay on? Stop recording?
Stop recording. Thank you.